On March 31st, 1985, there was one place that every wrestling fan had to be, and that was either deep inside MSG or at one of the closed circuit locations to witness the granddaddy of them all, WrestleMania. And yes, everybody was absolutely ready to watch this and see, would it be a success? Would it be a failure? The territories were certainly hoping it would be a failure, but it wasn't. It wasn't, and the territories continued to falter until they eroded, and then for better or worse, till death do us part, Vince McMahon basically blew wrestling apart, I swear. I'm John Renton with the Retro View / Redux of WWE WrestleMania 1 from Madison Square Garden. I'm going to talk about the history, a little bit of the minutia about this particular event, and I will talk about the matches in due course. I did do a retro view of this a number of years ago during the pandemic. My God, it has been so long since that, and I decided coming up on the 40-year anniversary, or at least 40 years since this event took place, the in-ring action wasn't very good. Granted, WWF television, and yes, it was WWF, by the way. Need to plug this once again. My sister decided to look at the logo online. Yes, she painted this because my sister is uber talented, and this is a cherished possession. Also, being a big wrestling fan, it is important to watch this event, even if you are a younger fan, or if you're a fan old like me, older than dirt, and you want to revisit this. Just keep in mind that you got to remember the history, and you got to understand where wrestling was. Yes, the AWA still was rocking and rolling, strutting and strolling to an extent. You had Jim Crockett Promotions. They were kind of going through a bit of resetting and everything, especially in '84. So they were kicking things into gear with two Starcades, 83 and 84, and that's the funniest thing about this. This was considered the granddaddy of them all, but Jim Crockett beat him to it. Vince McMahon did it better as far as more celebrities, as far as the glitz and glamour and stuff like that. And I will say that there are some matches that still hold up, and then there are some matches that are even worse than I fucking remember. But the crazy cast of characters, the kooky nature of this, and just the fact that Vince McMahon basically was able to get everything to align, the stars, the moons, every aspect of every celestial body in the universe and every other universe aligned, so WrestleMania 1 would be a worldwide success. And the sequence of events is just really goddamn fascinating. A lot of this was talked about when they did the WWE biography on WrestleMania. Yeah, there were things that they, left out, like the Hulk Hogan, Richard Belzer thing. Read up on it, kids. I'm not going to go into too much, but Richard Belzer, yes, Munch from Law & Order SVU. Can't help but say it like that after SCU. Can't help but say that. Yeah, let's just say not Detective Munch yet, but the man that is most known as Detective Munch essentially got a large payout from Hogan after he cinched up on a headlock. But let's be honest, Belzer was a noted cokehead. Not that there weren't a bunch of people in the 80s, but, I mean, come on. The man took a bump after taking several bumps, and, hey, he got a large payout and got a nice villa out of it. Unfortunately, Belzer has since passed, but what a legacy he left. Now, that was one of the things that they forgot about. They, of course, did mention Dr. D, David Schultz, slapping John Stossel. He should have slapped him a lot harder. And let me just say this. John Stossel, I hope, continues to just erode physically, because a man like that doesn't deserve to have any moment of peace. It's a damn shame that his kid didn't scream so loud that his head exploded like from scanners. I actually also don't believe that he was that hurt, because if David Schultz wanted to hurt him, he could have really fucking hurt him. I don't think David Schultz, by the way, would have lasted much longer in WWF, even if that hadn't happened, or even if it hadn't gotten to a lawsuit. But bless him for doing that. Nevertheless, John Stossel's a fucking piece of shit. So, the MTV partnership. That's one thing that I really don't think a lot of people understand now, especially if you are maybe even 30 years old. MTV. It's not like the reality stuff where maybe they show MTV Classics and they show the music videos. Or, Beavis and Butthead were, reviewing music videos, clips of music videos and stuff like that. That was in the, the early 90s to mid-90s. When MTV first started, they were doing some great, things as far as music videos and stuff like that, the VJs, all that. And it was a big boost to get rock and wrestling together. Not that MTV was necessarily floundering, but they got just as much of a boost, if not more, than WWF did. and the association with Cyndi Lauper. Captain Lou Albano being in Girls Just Want to Have Fun. Cyndi Lauper being about as New York can fucking get. But the brawl to end it all, the war to sell, the score, all this stuff, Captain Lou getting the record broken over his head by Roddy Piper, and Roddy Piper being asked, can you kick Cyndi Lauper and not hurt her? Well, I could kick her, I could take her head off. What's your point? When you kick Cyndi Lauper? Girl just wants to have fun? And even before that, during all this, you had Black Saturday when, Vince McMahon got control of the Georgia TV time slot. And, thanks to a deal brokered by Jim Barnett after Ole Anderson basically ran him out. Good job, Ole. You basically fucked yourself, Ole. You fucked yourself, Ole. What the hell? I don't know why I'm trying to do Ernie Ladd and failing, but nevertheless, the Briscoes sold their shares, and Vince McMahon basically was using it as a vehicle, being on USA in syndication, also on WTBS, showing old footage and not doing studio shows for a while until he was going to get kicked off the station. Continued to basically just push Turner's buttons. By the way, the ratings nosedived because people in the South wanted their Gordon Solie wrestling back. Stuff like this has been talked about. It was talked about in Dark Side of the Ring. It was also talked about on Jim Cornette's Drive-Thru and Experience, because wrestling historians, stuff like that, other wrestling historians have talked about that, but it was a big deal. And in the lead up to WrestleMania 1, they still had that time slot. And Jim Crockett wanted the time slot, so basically a deal was brokered for $1 million. Vince McMahon was running 3 to 4 events a night, and even though they were making a lot of money, look at how much they were spending, all the travel, all the stuff that they were doing. So they were spending a lot. I'm not saying they were going to go into bankruptcy, but Inoki got, it gave him $1 million in this time period, sometime in late 84, early 85, for, booking, to have Hogan, Andre, and other people come in and, that kind of stuff, especially when the New Japan partnership was really strong. Hogan still being super over as far as, a big deal in Japan. One of the main reasons why he did not get the AWA championship. He didn't want to give up his Japanese money or do a split, and he wasn't going to jump to All Japan because he already had that lucrative deal with New Japan that he had built at that point outside of the AWA, outside of Vern Gagne's bubble, and was very successful. Andre, hugely over there. So the $1 million, it was, Inoki probably was just like, whatever, I'm Antonio Inoki. I can just take everything on the chin. He obviously did. But that being said, $1 million from Crockett, $1 million from Inoki. They were having issues with video, the video rights and everything. They were, until they made the deal with Coliseum Home Video, they were going to sell out the video rights just to get the cash. But everything ended up working out. Everything ended up really working out to where Vince McMahon was able to get, the MSG, the MSG audience. And even though it wasn't quite the same audience, like you could look back in 82, maybe even early 83. And that's when Vince was really starting to expand, even in 83, but especially in 84. You can take a look at that audience, even in early 83. Take a look at them here. It's enough of a melting pot of the crowd, but then you go to like 88, it's totally different. And this is also still when they had the old school boxing, the lower microphone, that kind of stuff from the 50s and 60s and stuff like that, like the Mr. Kennedy gimmick thing that they tried doing later. And it was really, really cool. And you had an SNL, push by Hogan and Mr. T the night before. And then Mr. T all worried that he was going to get beat up because he rubbed Piper the wrong way and Orndorff the wrong way. And I believe Piper and Mr. T did make peace. Because I don't know if Mr. T was the most amenable guy. But Piper also was very protective of the business. I'm not knocking. I'm not saying that Mr. T, didn't deserve the ridicule that he got. But Piper could be very protective. That being said, you had the SNL push. You had a couple weeks before this, Jesse Ventura was in the ring, and then Jesse Ventura would be on commentary for this. So you have all this stuff going on. I really wish somebody would do a book about WrestleMania 1, the build-up and everything, because it'd be very fascinating to see how much history we could find out about stuff that we didn't even know. Cards, everything, all the build up to it. So WrestleMania 1 had a lot of pieces fall into place. They had some closed circuit locations that were shut down so they could get the money back. And 1 million people did not end up watching this particular event. There's no way that 1 million people watched WrestleMania 1, but even if they got 100,000 to 300,000 people watching, that's a lot of fucking money. Maybe it was 500,000. But that being said, it was a big fucking deal. You had all the pushes for talents that Vince got. You know, you got Steamboat, you got Piper. Orndorff had been there for a little bit. I believe Orndorff came up from Florida, if I remember right. You got JYD the year before. Got to get ready for the wall. Vince is coming. You got all these people there that I'm going to talk about when I get into the particular minutia of this. But he just had all these people, all these stars that he used all American wrestling for to basically put together his Christmas list. So yeah, shrewd of a businessman as he was, it was smart, and the promoters fell for it. That being said, let's just get into this after going a bit longer in the history than I planned. Yeah, it was kind of weird that Jesse Ventura was wrestling just a couple weeks before and then was doing commentary with Gorilla Monsoon. It's not Gorilla and Jesse's best, dueling, commentary, but it's pretty good. And it's just a nice time capsule. The old school boxing microphones I mentioned. Howard Finkel's the ring announcer. In fact, it is very, and granted, the event is just 40 years ago. By the way, I am recording this the day before the 40-year anniversary, so to speak, because I got a lot of shit to do, so that's why you'll see this video drop, and you'll wonder why the hell is it daytime when it's going to drop. But that being said, Howard Finkel's a ring announcer. Rest in peace, Fink. The best, or at least one of the best ring announcers, arguably the best. Mean Gene singing the national anthem, the crowd helped him. Lord Alfred Hayes, by the way, yes, promotional consideration paperwork by the following would be something that a lot of people in my wheelhouse as far as age would remember from the Coliseum home video pitches. Lord Alfred Hayes was not very good as far as, like an interviewer or a pitch man. He was very dry and he would stumble over a lot of stuff and he kept just looking. I mean, it's one thing to look down at notes if you're like me and you have notes for stuff, but when you're on a live broadcast, you probably need to actually memorize your shit. But then again, Lord Alfred Hayes wasn't the best wrestler and he also wasn't the best pitch man. And yeah, read up on Lord Alfred Hayes and the controversies that he had. So the pre-tape promos before the first match. Tito Santana, he certainly had a way with words. And then the executioner, the masked executioner that I forgot was Buddy Rose. And by God, when he first shows up, you're like, holy shit, it is Buddy Rose. And then he stumbles over his words and you're like, oh yeah, it's definitely Buddy Rose. So Chico Santana, as Jesse Ventura would call him, took on the masked executioner. Tito Santana would actually compete at the first 9 WrestleManias, 8 on the main show, and then he actually competed against Papa Shango at WrestleMania 9. Hooray, WrestleMania 9. I'm so glad that one gets put in my head. Chico Santana just is a funny nickname. It's offensive, but it's funny. It's not as bad as some of the stuff that Heenan came up with. And, yeah, Buddy Rose was a good worker, but he wasn't really allowed to do much. Like, none of the I think, like, 2 of the matches went over 10 minutes, and then everything else was, like, 7 or less. This was 4.5, maybe 5. Tito won with the forearm and then the figure 4. And then we got S.G. Jones cutting a promo that was a choice. Certainly was. King Kong Bundy. Good old Ernie Ladd. We bring in people here, and what do? You dumb yourself out of position. You big fat piece of shit. Good old Ernie Ladd. I believe that was Mid-South, if I remember right. That being said, this is King Kong Bundy beating S.G. Jones in 9 seconds. 9 seconds was actually 24 seconds, but nevertheless. Jimmy Hart was all over this show. Bless Jimmy Hart. So glad Jimmy Hart's still around. S.G. Jones passed away. Bundy, I believe S.G. Jones passed away. And Bundy, unfortunately, passed away a number of years ago. Bundy was a great big man. He really fucking was. He was charismatic. He was great on, Married with Children. I remember him doing the computer ads. Even as a kid, I was just like, you might want to buy a computer from him. I mean, even though back then we didn't even have a computer at the house because we live in the woods and we were in the dark ages for a while. But that being said, yeah, it was actually, it was more like 24 seconds, but he beat him. It was a big deal. And then Kane beat Chavo in 8 seconds, I think. So, I did note, is that Mel Phillips? The very... I'm going to choose my words carefully because I don't know how YouTube flags stuff, but yeah, the guy who like kids' feet. Read up on Mel Phillips, the WWF ring announcer. Linda McMahon and Vince McMahon ain't seeing heaven for that shit. Because Linda hired him back. Oh, just stay away from kids. Oh. Or maybe... It kind of reminds me of that part in Sleepaway Camp where they know the cook. Charlie, I think was the character's name. I'm trying to remember. I just rewatched Sleepaway Camp, as hilarious as it is. But they know how much of a creep he is, and they're like, well, just stay away from the kids. It's like telling a pyromaniac to stay away from fire, or Sonny to stay away from Dick in the locker room. Well, she can't be in the locker room with Dick, because she killed somebody and now she's going to rot in jail. But that being said, Matt Bourne cut a promo. He wasn't clowning around this time. Steamboat took on Matt Bourne. And this was actually when they were mentioning the fact that people were second-generation talents. Tough Tony Bourne, that was Matt's father. Ricky was great. There was a lot of side headlock work here, though. I mean, this match wasn't much longer than the Tito and Executioner match. In fact, it might have been a little bit shorter. But Matt Bourne, you want to talk about a piece of shit there. I mean, hey, at least his daughter had her shit together. And this is one of 2 WrestleMania matches he had. He had this one, then he had WrestleMania 9. And the fact that his most memorable moment on a mainstream stage was the WrestleMania 9 stuff. Yeah, it's kind of sad, isn't it? Against Kona Crush. God, that feud. God, even at 12 years old, it was bad. Okay, Crossbody wins it. Ricky wins it. Good job, Dusty. You ran Ricky out of there, and he went over there and had one of the best matches while you trusted Barry Windham. More on Barry Windham here in a bit. David Sammartino cut a promo. Dear God in heaven, Vince McMahon will not see heaven for that. Bruno was never the best promo, but dear God, he seemed like a friggin' Rhodes Scholar next to David. Johnny Valiant talked instead of letting Brutus the Barber Beefcake talk, which is probably smart. And that's building it up. So you have David Sammartino with his dad Bruno in the corner. And you have Brutus the Barber Beefcake, the favor hire that Hogan got, with Johnny Valiant, luscious Johnny Valiant. And oh dear, this is one of the worst WrestleMania matches ever. Ever. This might be top 10. This was abysmal. 11 and a half pissing minutes. Now, I know why they went a little bit, because they thought that David could actually mean something. When David was with Bruno, he was featured a little bit more. But David was worse than Eric Watts, for God's sakes. It's not that he couldn't work. It's that he was just fucking bland. And this was horrible. Brutus was a rotten fucking worker. Could never do anything right to save his life. He was fine with Greg Valentine because Greg could be the worker and Brutus could do the Coke bug-eye expression. I'd feel bad about making fun of Brutus Beefcake, but no, he's just as bad as a lot of other wrestlers that want to skew to the side of supporting a criminal. So no, as far as I'm concerned, Brutus Beefcake's face could fall apart and he could drown his own visage for all I care. That being said, yeah, this was horrible. The only reason the crowd popped for the double DQ is because Bruno and luscious Johnny Valiant got involved first. Johnny Valiant slammed David Sammartino outside. The Valiant Brothers, of course, legendary tag team. And when Bruno and Valiant got involved, the crowd was like, oh shit, finally some stuff's happening. Bruno, Bruno, Bruno chants. 11 and a half minutes of closed circuit pay-per-view time devoted to a David Sammartino Brutus Beefcake match. My God. My God. They could have put another women's match on here. They could have added another minute to like the first and the third match and cut this to, dear God. So Greg Valentine cuts promo while Jimmy Hart's there. And then JYD, who was fully into the drugs at this point, you could tell, because he was not in very good shape. He could get by in physical charisma, but it was JYD against Greg Valentine for the IC title. And man, JYD was... Not that JYD was ever the most premier worker, but you look at his stuff in Mid-South. It was... They covered it a lot fucking better because this was 6.5 minutes or so, and it felt longer. Greg was trying everything. You could see that Greg was just, angry. That's how he always looks. Greg Valentine was not very happy. And Jimmy took a header to the floor. I actually was a little bit worried. And Jimmy Hart still being alive at this point is wild. But JYD unfortunately did pass away in 1998. We got a roll up with the feet on the ropes for 3, but then Chico Santana, as Jesse Ventura calls him, comes out and says, no, his feet was on the ropes. Or were on the ropes in awful English. And the referee restarts the match, and Greg Valentine's like, I'm just going to go so we can send the crowd that came to see JYD happy by having JYD win by a countout. And I'm fairly convinced that JYD had no clue what was going on. So, we got an interview with the soon-to-be tag team champions. We got the Iron Sheik talking. We got Nikolai Volkov talking. And we got Classy Freddie Blassie talking. Ayatollah bless Freddie Blassie. And then the U.S. Express were, cutting promos. Well, Rotunda sort of and Wyndham sort of. And then Volkov sung the Russian national anthem, and then Iran #1, ha, toy, good, bless Iron Sheik. So it was Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov with Classy Freddie Blassie against the U.S. Express, Mike Rotunda, and Barry Windham. I believe he's called Rotundo. I'm calling him Rotunda because it's better, and that's his name. But, tag title match. And this was a big goddamn deal because it was the first title change in WrestleMania history. Okay, Sheik at this point was not in great shape. I mean, Volkov moved as well as he could. But obviously this was for the young, fresh-faced tag team, even though they've been there for a little bit, to do some athletic shit. And then eventually we got the classic cane shot. I believe we got the classic cane shot to the back. And we get to cover 1, 2, 3 new tag team champions. And Sheik is just, reveling in it and everything. And it looked like people were going to throw stuff at Blassie. And Blassie was approaching 70. And Blassie would have killed them. Blassie would have killed them even then. Like, he would have eaten them alive. And Sheik would have stretched them. And Volkov could have knocked him out with one goddamn punch. Just amazing. I mean, not that you would have been able to, make the looks of that crowd any worse, but I digress. Post-match promo was nice. New tag team champions. Apparently it was supposed to be the Briscoes, but then I believe Jack Briscoe said, I'm done. I'm going to go home. So then, Mean Gene tries to get into Heenan and Stud's sack. That's not a euphemism. It was a sack of money. A cleverly marketed WWF duffel bag full of $15,000 because Andre needs to beat Big John Studd by slamming him or he will retire. And I guess if Studd wins, then they get to cut Andre's hair. Or no, well, they cut his hair. Whole point is convoluted stuff, but whatever. Bless Big John Studd. He died of lymphoma complications about, not even a decade. It was just under a decade after this. That's the real sad thing. Heenan, unfortunately, is no longer with us. Andre was no longer with us. It was late stage Andre. It was really sad to watch, but the crowd is into it. Studd did his best. Andre could get by on just being the physical freak that he was. And eventually the slam chance and then come on and slam. And Andre wins, tosses money out to the crowd. Heenan gets the cash, and it's nice. And it's obviously wadded up ones. But still. It's not like the briefcase full of money that Vince McMahon brought into the police chief's office and obviously didn't pay them off to get renowned murderer Jimmy Snuka off the hook. No, why would Vince do that? Why would he do that? So, Andre promo, he was thrilled. Bless Andre, but English was never Andre's strong suit. But Andre was very, very verbose as far as enthusiastic. And I really wish he could have gotten the surgery just to see if he would have been able to live longer. But honestly, even if he had gotten the surgery for the acromegaly, I don't know if he would have been able to go on longer. maybe another decade, but with as much pain as he was in. Speaking of pain, the fabulous Moolah apparently decided to grace us with her ugly-ass presence. And fuck the fabulous Moolah. I hope she suffered horribly. The fact that she abused so many women, and I'm doing allegedly, by the way, because there are some conflicting things about a lot of stuff, but a lot of the students, Luna and Sherry and various others, say that, Moolah was abusive and pretty much a piece of shit and stuff like that, held women's wrestling down. And one thing that I especially won't give her, or forgive her for, is the Glamour Girls and the Jumping Bomb Angels were going to be part of WrestleMania 5, I believe. And Moolah had a title change done, saying the office approved of this, but they didn't because Moolah couldn't stand not being in the spotlight, so they missed out on a big WrestleMania payday. Having that WrestleMania match would have been a big goddamn deal for them. And regardless of the payday, would have been a big stage to show what they could do. Wendy Richter with Cyndi Lauper, and Cyndi Lauper about as New York as you can get, as I said, and you have Leilani Kai with the fabulous Moolah. Kai was the women's champion. This match wasn't good. I'm sorry, it wasn't. Like, bless them, they were trying to push a women's division, and there were talented women in the ring all over the USA and in Japan, but this wasn't it, Chief. We got a very bad counter to a crossbody into an eventual roll through, and Wendy got the victory. So yeah, she won the championship. That's great. The match wasn't very good, though. And then we got a brief fracas between Cyndi and Moolah, which it's a shame that Moolah was able to walk out under her own power. I'd feel bad for that, but I'd say that to her goddamn daughter because her mother was a piece of shit. So yeah, fuck the fabulous Moolah. I'm glad she's dead. And if the guy, and I don't remember his name, from the Moolah Dark Side that wants to do the Moolah campaign, wants to come at me, go ahead, you hillbilly. Go ahead. You try that. Assuming you even know how to spell internet. So that being said, fabulous Moolah, for everything she did that was good for wrestling, and she did some good, I'm not going to say it was all bad, she deserves to have her legacy tarnished and shit on. So, Billy Martin was a ring announcer, big New York-centric push here. Liberace with all the girls, flamingo dancers, whatever. And Muhammad Ali, he was the outside official. Really sad because I believe the Parkinson's was starting to take hold here. You could kind of tell. Because I don't... Did Ali fight much, if at all, after 85? I genuinely, the people that are more in tune to boxing, please let me know, because I'm trying to remember when he's actually officially retired. So it's Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. They make their entrances after Piper makes his entrance with the bagpipes and everything, and Mr. Orndorff's with him. So it's Hogan and Mr. T with renowned murderer Jimmy Snuka in the corner against Roddy Piper, Paul Orndorff, and Bob Orton Jr. with the cast on his hand. Pat Patterson was the referee, while him and Mel Phillips traded stories, allegedly. And so Hogan was able to lead this for his team because Mr. T was exuberant, but Mr. T was not an experienced worker. And I'm just going to throw these away because it's done. But Mr. T, he was fired up, but Piper and Orndorff kept it light and kept it moving and made sure to shut things down so it didn't expose things. And he did the airplane spin. He did enough stuff to show that he had been training. But let's be perfectly honest, Piper and Orndorff had to lead this. Orndorff, a premier worker, and Piper, just a great ring psychologist and also a very good worker in his own right. And Hogan, being the charisma machine that he is, the crowd was into it, chanting T. We got a brief brawl, a brief fracas and everything. All this crazy shit's going on. And eventually, things calmed down. Mr. T would get beat up for a bit. Hogan would then get tagged in. He'd get beat up for a bit. And they would do just enough, give enough hope spots and everything. Muhammad Ali got involved during the fracas and was trying to stop this stuff. Jimmy Snuka jumped on the top rope and was looking like, where's Nancy? You murdered her, Jimmy. You murdered her. And you never paid for it. But that being said, we eventually get to the finish. Bob Orton is going to hit Hogan with his cast. Unfortunately, they turn around in the full Nelson. Orndorff gets hit on the back of the neck. Hogan covers. 1, 2, Piper gets tackled by Mr. T. 3, so there you are. You get a big deal there. You get the aftermath with Orndorff being left by his teammates, Roddy Piper and Ace Bob Orton. And you get some great moments here. And what I like about all this is that it led to the eventual Orndorff babyface turn that would then lead to him turning on Hogan again right after WrestleMania 2. And then you get that switch. It leads to great business. One of Hogan's best goddamn money-making runs. That big event in Toronto. They gave Vince the inspiration to go into the Silver Dome, not the Superdome, that is, for WrestleMania 3 for 93,173. But WrestleMania 1, as far as a spectacle, yes, it would have more glitz and glamour and pomp and circumstance later. But as far as a starting point, it's a monumental deal. Now, it's not a great wrestling event, but it didn't need to be because everybody was really goddamn thrilled to see all these stars. That being said, what did you think of WrestleMania 1? Let me know in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Ritlin, and I'll see you soon.